Eternally we thrive. Your essence wraps around me. In your light I'm finally free. Your aura sets my spirit free. Bring me to my destiny.
What man, what sane man, would yield up his soul willingly, given the choice, especially if he knew each of the ramifications of that act? I have heard that it leaves a man in actual pain when apart from his wife, or as Estolians say it, their Kaylee. Before I left Estolia, one of the artisans accidentally severed an artery, and in minutes she was dead. Her husband, barely 40 years old, died in his sleep that night. Nobody was alarmed by his death. What alchemy do the women of Estolia practice on their men that they should accept such a one-sided deal? Quincy Lucellus Amador, Memoirs, footnote 18, second paragraph.
Catherine felt the car pull off the freeway and opened her eyes, expecting to see the streets of San Francisco with their maelstrom of colors and textures. It would likely be another half hour once they were on the city streets to get to Kitty's estate. But they were nowhere near the bustling, overcrowded streets of the city.
Where are we? Where are you taking me?
Instead of San Francisco, they were driving up into some rural inland foothills. The land around her was rich with the colors of a California countryside, mellow sienna, ochre, umbers, and yellows. They were somewhere east or north of their starting point. The driver did not reply verbally, but the car's speed increased. She felt a shiver of fear. This car was not sent by Kitty. 10 minutes later, he growled.
I will pull over in a minute so that you may speak on the phone. Do I have to tie you up to keep you from attempting to escape?
The driver spoke with a thick accent that was, nevertheless, understandable. They were in the middle of nowhere. If she tried to get away, this man would catch her. He was a large man, next to her own petite build. She wouldn't stand a chance.
I won't try to run away.
He pulled over next to an old burnt-out gas station. A lonely public payphone, clearly defunct, stood isolated from everything else. The driver pulled to a halt next to the payphone but did nothing else. A phone started to ring. She frowned at the phone outside the window. The driver cleared up her confusion when he answered the car phone in a foreign language and then handed it to her.
Okay, darling?
It was Ezekiel.
Are you okay?
He sounded scared and tense. Her eyes went to the man who had abducted her and she jumped when he growled impatiently.
Tell him how you are doing.
Her voice was shaky as she said,
I think I've been kidnapped.
Another voice came over the line, deep, somber, menacing.
She has been kidnapped, Mr. Zacharian. And if you want to see her again, you will do exactly what we tell you to do.
The line went dead and Catherine looked at the phone in consternation. When the driver extended his hand, Catherine handed the phone to him. Should she tell him she barely knew Ezekiel? Before she could decide, the driver pulled away from the payphone and was again speeding down the rural road. She could describe the face of the man who had abducted her. These people probably thought of her as expendable. They were never going to let her go. Not alive. No matter what Ezekiel did. Why would he do anything for her when they had only just met each other? The car finally stopped outside a remote farmhouse. Both back doors of the car were opened simultaneously by equally large and brutal-looking men who also made no attempt to hide their faces. One of them growled at her.
Are you going to give us any trouble? Or do you plan to cooperate?
Why should I? You're going to kill me, aren't you? I could identify you to the police.
She concentrated on speaking with calm detachment. If they did have a compelling reason to keep her alive, if they could convince her she would come to no harm, she would cooperate. But she could see no purpose in going meekly to her death. An older man stepped out of the house and said in a weak, reedy voice,
Jones, see to the room upstairs. I will speak with Miss Cicero.
He climbed into the car and settled into the back seat next to her.
You may call me Joseph.
He wheezed.
You are a remarkable young woman. I could not believe it when I heard about you. And so, of course, I acted without delay.
She shook her head, wondering what he was talking about. Was he sane?
Your lover is a very wealthy man, most influential. Until today, he has never shown the slightest weakness, never any way to get to him. Damnably clever, a cold, heartless bastard, like all the keepers of the soul of Estolia, self-righteous, sanctimonious, sexist.
He broke off what he was saying to give in to a prolonged bout of coughing. When he finally got his breath back, he looked out the side window to the small farmhouse before continuing his narrative.
Then he met you. And anyone who knows the Estolian faith, as I do, knows he fell in love with you.
He looked at her with a skeptical, scornful expression, seeing, no doubt, her forgettable figure, face, and hair.
I decided to take you immediately, before he knew you better, to intensify his angst.
He heaved a massive wheezing sigh, the air whistling as he exhaled.
When we are done, you will be freed, my dear.
He said finally, his voice gentle and paternal.
He will be faced with a decision, and likely he will make the right one for himself and for his future wife. A woman who will not be a little country bumpkin like you.
Despite his clear disdain for her looks, he seemed sincere. She had few choices available to her. She could fight this man and his brutes, and lose, or she could do what he asked and hope he was as sincere as he seemed.
Hope after disaster kept Ezekiel going, comforted by knowing deity's plans. How could she be taken, stolen, removed, leaving him forsaken after she is approved?